Good morning, everyone, and welcome to YouSolar's webinar today. Arnold Leitner, our founder and CEO, will be giving you the background of the last 3 miles to disrupt the trillion-dollar utility industry. In terms of housekeeping, there's really just one item, the Q&A. Please feel free to post questions to the Q&A as the webinar goes on, and we will then answer them at the end of the session. You should see a little Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom window where you can post questions at any time as they come up. So now, with no further ado, here is Arnold holding a shortened version of this talk at RE+, North America's biggest renewable energy conference and trade show. It took place in Las Vegas this past September. There were 40,000 attendees, more than 1,000 vendors and exhibitors. We were one of them. And today you get the in-depth version with all the background of that talk. So please, Arnold, take it away.
Good morning. Welcome to this webinar. We will take about 30 minutes to cover the topic, and then we'll have some time for Q&A, and that will be the last thing between you and the holidays. I hope you're excited for them. We are, but today let's focus on an important step that we'll take here with the energy revolution or transition. So today's talk is called The Last 3 Miles to Disrupt the Trillion-Dollar Utility Industry. People always like to think of the last mile, but unfortunately, as all of you know, the last mile turns out to be longer. But indeed, in our view, it is 3 miles, and we'll explain to you what those are and how we at YouSolar are part of paving or having paved the last mile to that disruption. So with this, let's start with the first mile. That's rooftop solar. It is the stuff that has revolutionized the industry because it brought, a form of energy generation onto the roof, right above the load. It was all grid tied, meaning the electricity that was produced was flowing down into the meter that connects to utility. Whatever was not at that moment consumed by the house flowed to the utility, and in the evening, in most jurisdictions, most countries, you could get that part of electricity back at no cost because you send it off. That's kind of a net metering schemes. There are other commensurate schemes where you get paid for what you send off and you purchase differently for what you get back. But the idea has always been the utility is really your battery, your storage of your energy. But rooftop solar has created this industry. It allowed, the scaling of solar panels, of inverter technology. It is the reason we're here today, and a great, huge success by policymakers in the industry that pushed for it, bringing down the cost of solar, I would say, easily by a factor of 10x, if not 20x, some of that order. So this has been a great thing for the industry. However, it was soon observed that energy is not the same as power. That's why it's called the power industry and not the energy industry. You need power when you turn on a certain appliance. You need it at night. So with that, batteries came in and started to store this energy so you can have it at a later time. And that is most of what you know about batteries probably. These are type of batteries that are installed in a garage. They are really there to arbitrage the energy with utility, for pricing purposes. You're holding back that solar energy if you don't get paid properly, or you hold it in your battery because it's advantageous for various other reasons, including incentives utility provides or allows you to have the solar system in the first place. But there is another step beyond what storage does. It's the obvious thing, right? I got renewables, they're intermittent, now store them, case closed. Not quite, and it goes. The story goes on. We're almost there, but we're not there, and we're, short in a way that has actually really had impacts on the industry and resulted in rollbacks of various solar incentives because ultimately it doesn't solve the ultimate technical problem. So let's get to that. With this, let's review a bit dated but not super dated some of the spec sheets of very popular solar battery systems out there. But I'm saying not much data because nothing has really changed. Most of these battery systems provide, a few kilowatt of power. I would call it sub-kilowatt range is probably fair enough if you look at this. And these are some of the major brands out in the market. So you'd think, well, I got what I needed. I got my own power system now. It stores the solar, and if there's no sunshine, it will provide power to my house. And of course, if there's an outage, it will cover my my load. So let's see if that actually holds up. So utilities have provided you power over decades and hundreds of years, 100 more years now, and increasingly your load has gone up. So the question I have is, what do you think, given what you just saw there in these inverters, what do you think, how many kilowatt of power is the typical supply to a reasonably modern home in the last decade or so here in the United States? Would it be about 8 kilowatt? That would be similar to what we saw earlier. Is it double that? Really, are these batteries that you can buy from these various vendors like short by a factor of 2? Or is it 40 kilowatt, 48, kilowatt, is significantly higher, a multiple higher than any of those batteries do. So with this, let's pop up the pop quiz and see what you think. Please provide your answers here. We're going to let this run for a little while. Okay, answers are coming in. Very cool. Okay, we got a distribution. All right. So no, I'm too fast here. People are still trying to find their mouse. All right, so I'm going to end this poll and look at the results. I think they'll be published for you. Otherwise, I read them for you. So the majority of people assumed that 3/4 of you that the typical power delivered to a home is 16 kilowatt, when indeed it is 48 kilowatts, so significantly higher. So let's take a look at why that is the case. All right, let's dismiss this pop quiz here, and let's continue. Let's look at one of those homes. This is a typical 200 ampere connection. That's what's called in industry speak. If you multiply this by not 120 volt, but by 240, and if you could remember, you did the physics, you end up with 48 kilowatt. All the homes can have a 100 ampere connection, but any home that's been more recently built has a 200 ampere connection. So let's look at this a little more here. Well, despite storage, your home battery system is still entirely reliant on utility power. So that just doesn't mean simply electricity. It also means power in the sense of regulatory power, because you depend on the utility to interconnect with it, and you need to get a permit for that grid tie. I'm not just referring to grid-tied solar, but I'm referring to even your home battery. And all the remaining power really that you need for your house is not coming from your home battery, it's coming from the utility. So you're really still beholden to the utility, and therefore they know that, they control the game. They will let you know what type of energy you may store in your battery, when you can use it, and there are limitations on that. And of course, it acts as a brake on the industry, and certainly is not a path forward for all of those who want to become independent of the grid, which is all of our customers. And also, as I'll show, there's a benefit for utilities if we are able to make these home battery power systems independent of that need for instantaneous power and that high power from the utility. So therefore, we're introducing the third mile, which is really a high power inverter driven, of course, by a high power battery. So let's look why that is all true. Because if you were to take your utility bill and you look at the hours of electricity consumed in a year and divide it by 8,760 hours, you would get a number, and it probably looks like 2 or 3 or 5 kilowatt. And you would go, well, my little power wall or whatever device you have would cover that nicely. Well, take a look at this Wikipedia entry if you don't have the data yourself, and read about electric power distribution. And you'll learn shortly in a few paragraphs that the distribution system in your neighborhood, those transformers and cables, are 10 times bigger than that average load. So what is true for a group of houses is even more true for your individual home. So there's a difference between the peak load of your home and the average load of a factor of 10. So that means, if I want to really power my home, start up these motors that are inside of air conditioners, I need a lot more power than I thought. So here we go. Let's start this bubble here. And we have our 48 kilowatt power supply. This is what comes from the utility. Then we typically see a sustained peak of 24 kilowatt. That's what we can typically measure. And there is this ratio of 1 to 10. So as a matter of fact, the instantaneous power can even exceed, the 24 kilowatt, which is why the utility, of course, provides 48 kilowatt. Because the last thing I want to come back is because on Christmas, everything was running, including the electric Christmas tree and a stove and everything, and suddenly the power trips. They don't want this, so there's overhead in here. But regardless, you can see that there's a big piece of infrastructure in place to supply your instantaneous power. But if you now were to have a high power inverter, store your solar energy in a battery, and say you were capable, or you did have a power block where about 90% of your energy comes from your own solar through self-consumption, you would find in simple math that your average load on the utility is now only 240 watts. And the need for a supply to you is reduced by a factor of 200 from the 48 kW to the 240 watts, because the 240 watts now only are energy supply to your home, while the peak power is actually delivered by your battery system or by your independent power system. So what you need in this case, since you're no longer connecting to the utility, you need your own grid. You need a grid forming inverter, and that grid forming inverter has no more a grid tie. So it doesn't like aid and add to the grid. Your inverter runs your home, which has also many benefits because you no longer are affected by any of these transients or outages that are on the grid, because presumably your battery is between you and the grid. And we'll see in a moment how that changes that and de facto creates an uninterruptible power supply for the home. So here's a schematic of the power block architecture. It's unique in that at the core of it is a purebred 380 volt direct current bus that then feeds into an inverter. But you see there's really no connection in black here between the AC of the grid and the AC into the house. And we also show that the rectifier is a kind of small piece, while the inverter is kind of a big piece. So the rectifier, which I'll explain in a moment what it is just a means of bringing some energy into the house from the utility due to variability of sunshine and other considerations. But it no longer is a large connection. We earlier showed that 240 watts would actually work. And also it no longer touches your load, which changes the entire relationship you have with your utility. So what's a rectifier? It's a one-way street. It takes the AC off the grid and puts it onto DC. And there it blends with the system power, and is no different if you look on the right-hand side than the plus minus output of a solar panel. And at 240 watts, solar panels are now, in 400 watts, produce about 325 under real conditions. It's close, your connection utility is no longer big. It's more like one of your panels. So let's quantify this a bit. Here is a power supply. I hope it doesn't go away when I click. Yeah, correct. So 87 watt, that's your, larger, not the biggest, but your larger Apple power supply. You probably have a couple of those in the house, or you have a PC. Just 3 of those, and you would have all it takes to interconnect your power system with utility. And you can see that the utility does not ask you when you plug this into your wall outlet, neither will they ask you to connect your power block to them if you have that little of an impact, just from a load perspective. Never mind, you're not even interconnecting with them. So this is it. This is your YouSolar power block. This is one of our systems that we've installed. It's about 50 kilowatt hours. There's 32 kilowatts of power. And it only has, in this case, a 6 kilowatt utility connection. I'll speak to why it's a little bit bigger. And also it has a generator input. And what else does it have? It has about 20 kilowatts of solar. So it provides independent power to the home. It runs an induction stove. It runs the pool heater. It runs the entire premise. So what makes this possible to build this scalable, compact system is the only parallel direct current architecture in the market. It's a patent architecture. You'll often hear about, some batteries AC coupled, DC coupled. That only refers to the solar array. And then when you listen to AC coupling, that's actually how all these subsystems connect to each other. They all do this on AC, and that has enormous limitations on scalability as well as on size of these components and simplicity. So for example, you cannot simply add a generator to an AC coupled a power system because both will have a different frequency at the moment they turn on. So that's what makes this possible. That's why we can bring in a generator or any other fuel source, as you see in a moment. And the parallel nature refers to what you see here, like this rib structure. Any of those modules here could be in any other position inside of those two cabinets. You just can move things around. It's like Tetris, you know, as long as you fit it inside of the box, you are covered. It doesn't matter in what order the modules are. Similarly, it doesn't matter in that sense, you know, the sequence of the solar panels. All solar panels are independent. You can consider a solar panel as one of those elements. They're all in parallel. So if one panel drops out, just that panel is gone. If one panel comes back in, you expand the array, just that one panel is added. So that's a big benefit, and that allows us, which you will see shortly, the scalability of our system. So whether you have one cabinet, 2 or 4, or as many of our customers now, 8 cabinets that we're shipping next summer, it's the same system. It just doesn't matter because everything is in parallel. So whether there are 10 people standing in the bus or 100 people that are standing in the bus, it's just a wider boardwalk, but it doesn't fundamentally change for the person at the bus station, you know, what they need to do with regards to everyone else standing there. So the power block is multi-source, and that's possible and easily possible because of its direct current architecture. Everything that connects to it is either a direct current source or an alternating current source. These AC sources, just like a generator or a grid supply, will be rectified, brought onto the bus. Anything that's a DC source will be the solar or the battery, or in our case, the electric vehicle with a bidirectional DC-DC charger, which we will hope to introduce next summer from a partner that is compatible with our DC platform, because what we have chosen is a standard, the 380-volt direct current standard. I didn't have time to pick the right slide here. We should have replaced the generator with a fuel cell. We have a power block out there that is actually running a fuel cell as one of the sources of energy on top of all the other sources you see here, except for the generator and the car. So, and that required really no change in our design. We just connected the fuel cell to one of our modules, and it's in there, it's running. So that's the beauty of the power block's multi-source architecture. Because we are a grid connected, not grid tied system, there's really no difference between on or off grid. The inverter is an independent source. It's grid forming. So, you know, when the rectifier does not bring energy from the grid, you're off grid. If you don't have a generator, a utility at all, then you're on grid. Then you're off grid. By definition, if you have a generator, you know, blend into it, then you can consider yourself off grid as well. So there isn't really any difference between on grid and off grid. And I probably just confused everyone by misspeaking here, but just I think the earlier chart suggested how this architecture works. So nanogrids are not just good for you. They're not just reliable power. They don't just allow you to, you know, be less dependent on utility, not get utility approval for your system. You don't need it. But they're actually also good for the utilities themselves, for the power systems. Why is that? First of all, if I want to have a new home or anything I want to connect, you know, I have to kind of install this kind of infrastructure to deliver the 48 kilowatt of your home, and that's just the current home. We now see homes that have double or triple this amount of power supply that they would otherwise need for utility, and they cannot get it from the utility at the location where they are. It's prohibitive in cost. We're talking $50,000, $100,000, $150,000 of utility upgrade costs that you have to bear. In those cases, these customers, which are admittedly large homes or businesses, they opt for a power block because we can deliver the power. Only 1/200th of the energy needs in terms of power is then required, and that is always available from the utility. So what previously was a crane and a transformer just basically fits into a small little utility shopping basket to make the connection to the new customer. You will lose energy sales and you will lose power infrastructure, but bear in mind, the customer will do it anyway. So you better join them, and if you can't beat them, but there are benefits that flow to you, and ultimately recall that the entire energy system is increasing in demand because of EVs. If you don't know this, I'm telling you today, electric energy demand is spiking. It's growing fast. And so utilities will have plenty of opportunity to serve the customers, and will actually be in a bind to deliver all that energy and power. So next thing is, so the nanogrid I showed you earlier was charging happily for 240 watts for 24 hours a day to make up for that energy. But why? We could just say, let's run it for 1 kilowatt and run it for 6 hours. And that's the reason you saw earlier why that home didn't have just one rectifier, it had two. That home disconnects from the grid pretty much at 8 o'clock in the morning, runs entirely with solar, doesn't source any energy at all into the evening hours, and then at night kind of stores a little bit of electricity to kind of make up for what the batteries have no longer in store, or to top off the batteries to some safety level for a pending outage that could be coming at any moment. Now, for the grid, it really means that there is a digital load suddenly, because it doesn't see any of the other load, right? It doesn't see the variability of they don't have to worry if there's a football game going on or Christmas is coming. Utility doesn't deal with that. Their customer is binary. It's either on or off at 1 kilowatt. And often this customer cannot draw more than 1 kilowatt because that's all he's or she connected to. For disclosure right now, the smallest rectifier we have is 3 kilowatts. So the smallest customers are currently connected to are 3 kilowatt, but that's plenty for the energy supply. So what it means is a simpler grid operations, especially as utilities are struggling to keep up with demand and with climate change that's impacting reliability. It also allows you schedule energy purchases. You don't have to buy when you need the grid power. You don't have to not do your laundry. You do your laundry whenever you want, and the energy will come when you decide to. And in our cases, our customers don't buy electricity during peak prices, and they just disconnect from the grid. So the impact for the grid, this is more complicated. I won't go into detail this on our website, but basically today you have large excess capacity on the lines. Apologies, and you have lots of overhead in the capacity. So here the two stacks indicate additional capacity, and there's your load. And then peak demand, your power plants are running full throttle because you have to deliver all these multiples of 24 or 48 kilowatt, and your lines are full, transmission lines are overloaded. That's the grid today, and that results in the worst case in a blackout or brownout. But tomorrow's grid, when you have batteries locally that charge from solar, maybe a bit from the grid during off-peak hours, and they can deliver the power to the home when out of the power to the home, the peak power, then your power plants become energy sources. They no longer need to be so peaker friendly. So we took one of the chimneys out, indicating it's not as oversized, and your pipes are more filled because your average demand, you size everything on your transmission system to your average demand. You don't design anymore for peak demand, because your peak demand is marginally higher than the average demand, because it's just those remaining on the grid that don't have these kind of systems. And this is not hypothetical. This is exactly what the utility industry wants, what they need. And currently everything that's happening on the grid is in the opposite direction because of all these grid-tied systems that are resulting in no demand during the day time, and then peak demand in the evening because more and more things are electrifying, including the car. So no power, no rush. So you have some customers on the end of the line right now. You have this whole fleet of electricity trucks, and there's a storm coming. You mobilize from the neighboring county, you mobilize from another state, and power goes out, and these trucks are whirling everywhere. You get penalized by utility. if you're late, why bother? You put a power block into one of those homes, could be utility owned, that are on the edge of your grid, and when that customer goes down because the line gets disconnected, how much they're losing? They're losing 240 watts, and they still have a large battery, and with some luck, that's in the summer when they're disconnected maybe from the grid for months. You don't have to worry about them. You can take your time first addressing the customers that don't have that kind of a system, and then you can go out. You need fewer to these customers. You need fewer service car, and fewer personnel. So the result: fewer peakers, smaller pipes, that's the transmission lines, high utilization of all those assets, and more time for service. So getting these high power independent systems into homes has a great benefit for the grid overall. So where are the customers? New York Times published this article a little over a year ago, and it mentioned how many people are tired of being on grid. Currently, also with the changes in net energy metering laws in California. You're only being paid wholesale power for your solar electricity. So it's becoming increasingly attractive to add the battery, add power just to that, and people just want to cut the cable or become independent. Or at a minimum, when they do both, they don't want to talk to utility anymore. And that's what the power block provides as a benefit. It does not require utility approval. New York Times says millions of people could eventually go off grid as cost drops. We agree with that, even if that really means grid forming, meaning customers stay on their connection, but they don't really use it much anymore. So where are we right now in the market? So we have 6 grid-connected homes operating, all of them in the wine country. We have 2 off-grid systems at the very opposite ends of the climate, one on the coast, right off a cliff near Carmel, and one up in the mountains near Silver Springs. We have last year taken time to change the ability, how easy the power block is installed, and those new systems have been sold and are going out to customers. This summer, what's really different is the size. I would say one customer this year is about as big as all customers combined. Not quite, but one of the systems we sold was like $350,000, and that doesn't include a single solar array, doesn't include any electric work, simply includes our cabinets being installed. And also I'll say, because of our business model, we have a very clear control of our margins. We don't get lost in projects. We don't do any of this. We know how to insert our modules into those cabinets. That's now plug and play through our backplane connector that we developed, which I'll report to, and we'll have a presentation on next year. We control it very well, and we're starting now to sign up more customers. But these are very large projects we're doing. So these customers also at the end of the road. The power block is uniquely capable to be an off-grid system. It already runs off-grid. And our destinations, not just in residential areas, and 2 of our customers are actually tasting rooms, processing rooms at wineries, just like the one that you see here in this picture. And of course, at Places of Hope, the power block is uniquely able to be a primary and a backup systems for emergency shelters, for the hospital, for clinics. And in fact, we have a customer that is a clinic, and you saw it earlier down in Florida. And we're in construction there with that project. So the question is, though, of course, that's nice, Arnold, but where's the action really going to be? And the action is really going to be the rest of the world. And if you take a look at the band of 30 degrees south of the northern latitude and north of the south, so that's around this equator, plus or minus 30 degrees, you see a lot of red, indicating a lot of solar resources. But that's also where billions of people live. And for these people, there is a different issue of seasonality. You know that seasonality is a challenge for up here in the Northern Hemisphere. But the question now is seasonality really a problem for where most customers live, where demand is growing, and where there's plenty of solar resources? So let's have this pop quiz here, and let's see, what do you think it takes to eliminate seasonality, not daily cloud variability, that we do with the battery anyway. But the seasonality, how much do we need, what do we need to change? So do we add 40% more solar panels? Does the battery really have to be very large? Or is that just what an entire story you've been trying to tell us on it just goes bust? Okay, I think we got our answers. So the answers that you had, sorry, Paul asked the correct question, say 40% there, not 30%, is a typo. But I'll say that correctly. Those who are assuming that we will only need 40%, correct that, there's a typo there, more solar panels, 30% less solar means 1 over 0.7, that's 40 more percent. That's indeed all that's required. And solar panels are cheap compared to everything else you're doing. It's an incremental addition on the roof, and therefore not a big deal. So indeed, the story holds water. We can really power billions of people with independent solar system. So we got 30% less energy in the winter, but we can make up for that by just adding 40% more solar panels. So for billions of people, the sun is strong, as we saw earlier, red and yellow areas and orange areas, and it's flat, meaning it doesn't really vary much during the year. With that, because of the climate, also the consumption, the loads of customers don't change much. Those are kind of anti-correlated. Sun goes away, it goes cold, people heat. But in southern latitudes, if it's sunny, it gets hot, and there's more sunshine when there's more air conditioning. So seasonality is actually not a problem if you really try to come up with a global solution. The solar nanogrid works anywhere in the world. It doesn't really care what type of utility service you have, if the utility service is at a certain frequency or whether it's good or bad, because of this rectifier approach. The question is, of course, how do we take it everywhere? These cabinets that you saw earlier are big, they need to be moved. But the beautiful thing about the power block, it is a modular architecture, and we have already built, and you see it behind me, if you can look at the little video screen on the upper right corner, the stackable module. We continue working on it, but we've taken a major leap in bringing that to market with our current new backplane connectors for the power block that we're shipping in the summer. And that is actually the entry for us to really then take on this challenge, and the mechanical challenge for the most part, to create these stackable modules, which have a lot of advantages, including they'll be cheaper than what we're doing today. So it's plug and play. Anyone can assemble this. It ships easily because the modules break down, and it's very quick to assemble. You don't have to have any skill. As a matter of fact, that's true also for our power block. Once the cabinets are installed and you're inserting those modules, there's really no particular know-how required to start the system up. So we have one power block in that sense in the future, comprising multiple modules, and it allows us to build all of them. So that's really our vision. This is where we want to grow. There's many things that come into this. Repair just means removing a module by unstacking and restacking. Serviceability, shipping those modules, all these things become easy. The goal is that this can be done by any electrician with regards to interconnecting with the house, and by any person when it comes to unstacking and restacking the power block. That's what we want to do. So from a home in California, all the way to a clinic in Indonesia, this is where we want to take the power block. And we believe that these solar nanogrids that are standalone, independent power systems that don't care how good the grid is, whether it's there, how reliable it is, will disrupt the trillion-dollar industry, because they did the last and important thing. They covered the third mile of doing what any system really must do: deliver power to your load at any time, including the peak power. Briefly on the leadership team, I'm Arnold Leitner, I'm the CEO. I've been doing clean tech for a long time. I have been in solar thermal power before, and now have this passion for these independent power systems. Bob Rudder has deep experience in power systems, built independent power systems from residential developments to a military base. Rupert Mayer is our head of partnerships and operations now. He's going to drive a lot of these sales now that we are ready for next year. We're just going to really push, and we have such a high conversion rate. We know these customers out there. We're just going to now go out and meet with them. And these are mostly builders and architects. And Mike Allman is a successful clean tech visionary. At his time at Sempra Generation, he built the very first utility connected and owned solar power plant in the United States. So thank you for your time. Thank you for being part of this webinar. And now we'll open up to some questions. I hope you have submitted them in the chat box. But before I go there, of course, one of the reasons, other than informing you, is to encourage you to check out our campaign page on Start Engine and invest in the company. We are over $450,000 in this third race. Again, we're meeting our goals, and I think we're doing something extraordinary. And we have a story for growth, a story of scalability, with taking this modular architecture, which we have built, where we have now developed most of the subcomponents to take that and put it into our stackable power block. But I'll tell you, even with the business we have today, we will be a successful company. So with that, thank you. And please submit your questions, and I will answer them here. We'll try to keep it maybe to 10, 15 minutes, because I'm the last thing between you and the holidays. But let's see if any questions have come up. Thank you so much for listening. So I'm looking for my queue here. Rupert was saying he was going to put questions here in our chat box. Ah, here is one. I overlooked it. So the question is, how long does a power block last during an outage? Well, there's a first and a second wave of battery systems. Quite a few customers we have contacted us, deeply disappointed. They were sold a battery power systems by one of the major brands. The rep told them, oh, you got 5 days of power, and go to some of the websites, you see these claims, they're outrageous, okay? First of all, your power block, your power wall, your power, whatever system, unbalanced. Even our system will be half empty, right? Statistically, these are cycling batteries. When you get hit by a power outage, they'll be half empty, unbalanced. So if you're lucky, they're full. If you're unlucky, they're empty at the moment because it just dispatch power to do some price arbitrage. So instead of a 10 kilowatt hour battery, you have a 5 kilowatt hour battery. So if your load was only 500 watts, your battery would be empty in 10 hours. And that's not much. That's just your router. That's just your doorbell. That's just, 1 or 2 lights. So you need to take your average load in the house. So take your average consumption in the house, or take utility bill, divide it, get your average power, and then divide the storage in half and divide it by that power, and you get an idea how long it lasts. So say you have a 5 kilowatt average power demand. You take the 10 kilowatt hour battery system, you divide that, you basically got 1 hour. Okay, so you have to really go to large batteries, because we don't even sell really anything less than 45 kilowatt hours for that. Okay, how we manufacture a power block. So the power electronics are made by a small, very qualified commercial contract manufacturer, not commercial, contract manufacturer in Monterey. The chassis are made by a metal shop here in San Jose. We then drop these boards in. We have small circuit boards that we make for the controls that are also going to be soon outsourced, and then drop it in and connect it in a way that it's all together. There's not much to do. It really plugs in these pieces, and then we test it first outside, one side in a mock power block, and then we ship it out. So that's kind of the process. So it's really very, very scalable business. We don't do a lot of the manufacturing ourselves. So the question on battery, you hear all these news. News are cheap. You can say, someone has a 1,000,000-mile battery. Next guy has I got someone who sent me an email yesterday, said a 25-year battery. What can you do? Okay, let's just get real. The technology of choice for chemistry is lithium iron phosphate. All lithium iron phosphate have ultimately the same cycle lives. There's small changes, depending on the size of the cell, whether you have a pouch, a cylindrical, or a prismatic cell, which are just different sizes. So it depends on how quickly you discharge it, how deep you cycle it, but fundamentally, it's all the same chemistry, no matter what people tell you. And so I would say you can reasonably expect by the normal daily cycle you run in a battery, given how much a battery should be charged and discharged, the average power levels to see, you should expect to get about 10 years out of the battery until its charge has dropped to about 80% of its original capacity. It could be 15 years on lighter loads. But that's true for everyone. When they state you different numbers, they're just willing to take a bigger risk on the warranty. It's not that under the hood they have anything different in terms of battery chemistry. Okay, so lithium iron phosphate is the safest of all chemistries. It's the question on safety. I have yet to find a single news article of a lithium iron phosphate battery having a thermal event. That's a nice way of saying they burned. But I actually checked with our manufacturer. One of them, they have sold 50,000 packs, the type we have in our batteries. Those batteries are being made by the minute, and they had 2 thermal events over the history of selling those battery packs. And one of them was one of the batteries gave up a little bit of smoke, and one of the batteries got hot, warm. None of them ignited. So also, I like to put this in perspective. The amount of fuel you would have in a little gas can in the garage for a lawnmower greatly exceeds the amount of energy that could be combust in a battery in your home. So I think the safety issue for lithium iron phosphate chemistry specifically is not a big one. Or you do all the fire suppression, you do all the reasonable stuff, but it's not a major one. And if you watch these videos of electric e-bikes burning up on the sidewalk, That's a entirely different chemistry. This is done by hobbyists that sell 1 or 2 bicycles. They don't have sophisticated battery management systems or relays on shutdowns and breakers. So I think you can really rely on lithium iron phosphate battery to be very, very safe. Yes. So question is, does the power block can use any solar panel? The answer is yes. We actually do not even get involved in the installation of the solar panels at our projects. We size them to match the needs of the home. We make suggestions to the architect and builder where to locate them for energy generation, and then the installers come and install them. They do all of detailed design, the permitting. We provide them the microconverter. That's a UL certified DC-DC converter that is part of our direct current bus, and then they do the installation. But any panel, it will work. There's really no limitations. We can also do large panels, small panels. So do we want to be a partner? So we don't want to be a partner for the solar panel, because the way the solar panel industry works is that the installers out there that also drive business, not just are called up by us, they sell what they have in stock. So just because there are certain ski jackets in a ski resort doesn't mean that's the only ski jackets they make in the world, but that's the ones they have, and that's the one they want to sell you. So a lot of these installers need to build by volume, and we're not going to argue with them what panel they stock, what they were able to buy cheaply in the megawatt scale and want to put in these homes. Of these 5 to 10 panel brands that we see, all of them are high quality. Certain customers that where we bring an installer, we specify the panel because the customer is aesthetically very choosy. But yeah, we can work with any panel. I don't think we'll partner with a battery maker either, because the type of batteries we can use can come from any vendor. We currently use 2 different manufacturers of our battery. But what we will try to do is align ourselves with channels out of the construction business or out of installation business, so that they will bring projects to us, and then they can use whatever panel they like to choose, and we do the rest. Okay, I'm gonna read this is a longer question, so about rack mounted. Okay, so yes, the question is, the rack mounted cabinets I showed you earlier are more flexible, because one, you can take a module out and in without having to move any of the other modules. You can get larger cabinets, you get multiple cabinets, but that's also true to a great extent for the stackable power block. I will say, unlike the cabinets where we have some flexibility on the backbone, currently, actually I should show this. This is our 350 ampere backbone for our cabinets. We try to choose a smaller backbone for the stackable versions, and we try to currently limit that system to 100 kilowatt, which is about 400 ampere. But then again, that stackable power block would be compatible with a rack version, so that you could have both at the same time if you wanted to. But the answer is, we look at the rack mount more for the very large customers, the small commercial, and the stackable really for almost everyone else. Okay, I think this was the last question we got. Thank you so very much for being on this call. I wish everyone hope. There's another question coming in. Okay, so can the stackable power block be on coasters, so it can be moved around? The answer is yes. And that depends on markets we're in. Ultimately, could the power block connect with a flexible conduit? Would you want to limit how far that can roll? The answers to all of these are yes. But remember, the power block does interconnect with some things. You don't want to have this very heavy modular stack roll away and pull on any connection it has to the wall or load. But could a power block that be standalone, roll around, and panels be connected with a long wire? The answer is yes. Yeah, there's no reason why it couldn't be on coasters, especially smaller systems. Okay, we have one more question coming. All right. I guess that's it. All right, good. Thank you so much. Again, I'm gonna wish you happy holidays and happy new year. Spend some time with your family and friends. It's the most valuable part of the holidays. And please check our campaign page at YouSolar. You just go to the site, or you just use the URL URL, apologize. We have so much UL certification. URL that's in the earlier I showed you earlier, and come and check us out. There's a lot of Q&A. Apologize, a lot of updates at the bottom of the campaign with more information about YouSolar, and we believe the campaign page is also very informative. Please join the 2,500 more investors that we have today and be part of our story. We're very different. We have a clear plan, and we want to build a better future for this world. So thank you very much. Happy holidays, and we'll see you on the next webinar. Bye-bye.